Brandon Smitley from BrandonSmitley.com. I've been looking at a lot of training videos lately from clients, myself, working with my training partners, and I'm seeing some common themes with the bench press and what's happening. So I'm going to address some of these in this video. They're not only going to help make your bench press more efficient, lift more weight, but hopefully keep your shoulders and your training career extended, so not only are your shoulders healthier, you can do things later on in life, but you also have a bigger bench press coming day. Okay, the first issue I want to cover is probably going to be very debatable, and people are probably going to say, well, I'm raw, I need to do it this way because I can't really do more weight. I see a lot of people lift their head when they bench press, specifically raw, and then they have that push there to get the weight going. I'm not a fan of that. One, if you compete in the IPF or a federation that tells you have to keep your head down, you can't do that. So that's your first reason. It's going to be rules. Second is we're looking at a bigger range of motion and loss of tightness off the chest. So the reason why I say that is after you unrack the bar and you're in your bench press position here and your head is back, my shoulders can stay back much more efficiently, right? So when the bar comes down to my chest and then I get the press command, if I'm here, you can see that my bar is actually dipping. It's not a lot, but it's dipping. As that happens, my shoulders start to roll forward, and then when I have to go to press, I have to actually push my belly up, push my back into the bench, and then the bar begins to come this way. Well, that's the last thing I want to have happen is the bar to actually drift in either direction off the chest. The first motion we want is to get it off, right? Then from there, it can be personal preference on what your shoulders and elbows are going to do, how early you're going to flare, and all that kind of stuff. That will depend upon leverages. But any drift this way is not good, and any range of motion this way is not good because that's loss of force production. So I think keeping your head actually down when you go to press is actually going to help you push away from the bar, which is what you should be doing initially. Because if you're doing this, we're going there, right? Where if I'm here, off. Okay? That's the first mistake I see. The second thing I want to cover is going to go hand in hand with what I just talked about raising your head, and that's going to be breathing when you bench press. First thing I'll talk about is just breathing in general. If you're going to do a single and then training, meet day, whatever, I personally believe you should take your breath and lift off and not let it go. You're not going to ever be able to get that tightness back again once the weight is in your hands and you have that load, because if you actually exhale, your chest is going to fall, and then when you try to re-inhale, it's not going to be as good, right? So first thing is learn to be able to train on one breath with probably anything from 1 to 3 reps. Vince and Zinzo did an awesome job with this with me when I competed in my bench-only meet equipped a couple years ago. I had to do triples in a shirt on one breath, and that is incredibly hard because time retention is much more than raw. However, I still think when you're a raw lifter, learning to do that with singles, doubles, triples, maybe even lighter sets of 5 is going to help teach you to maintain tightness, but also at the same time how to hold that breath and deal with the actual pressure, because that's what's going to be there on meet day. The second thing is when you take that breath, where should the breath go? When you're squatting and deadlifting, we're talking usually about diaphragmatic breathing, 360 degrees, up and down, create that cylinder, compress, brace, all that great things. Whoever you listen to coach it, whatever, it's been around for 30, 40 years, but for some reason people are just trying to rename it. But when you're bench pressing, we're mainly looking at trying to breathe actually up into the chest, because we don't actually have to push anything out this way. We're trying to decrease the range of motion of the bench press. You've got 1 rep. You're not really going to be able to sit into any hips or have any kind of issues like that. So if the breath is up here, we're going to decrease the range of motion. My rib cage is actually going to expand. Again, what we don't usually teach when you're squatting and deadlifting. But if you're going to have the bar, and with your head down, if you take your breath into your belly here, while I'm raw, that doesn't really do me any good, right? If I can take my breath here, then my chest is a little bit higher. It's a little uncomfortable. It's not exactly efficient breathing, but we're talking about the sport of powerlifting where efficiency is the shortest range of motion or the easiest way to do something, and that's going to be the easiest way to bench press more weight. Some people might argue with breathing like that, but I think once you put a shirt on and you really understand how to breathe up, how much more of a difference that makes, and that just carries over to raw even though you don't have that shirt, because you actually want to press the weight a shorter amount of distance. Not only when you take that breath up here is your chest higher, but you actually have something firm to actually hold against to. So like we talked about in the first point, when your head comes up and it dips. Well, if you don't have that, if you have that breath down here, that still actually dips down. But if my breath is up here and my head stays back, that's actually a really hard surface. So when I go to press, it just comes right off versus it actually having to go here and bounce, right? Now you might get some favorable commands with that little bit of sink and dip and raising your head. I wouldn't want to chance that on meet day, and if you're in more stricter federations where they're actually making sure the bar is truly motionless before it goes, that sinking is going to hurt you a lot because they're just going to let it keep sinking until it actually stops, right? So for those 2 points, head down, remember, keep your belly up, breathe into your chest. Okay, the third and final thing I'm going to talk about is more of our scapular motion when we're bench pressing. I think for the most part, if you're powerlifting, you know that you need to keep your shoulders back and down and in this position and locked. If you're not doing that, I highly suggest just looking at some bench press articles that are derived towards powerlifting training, and also look at an anatomy book, what helps the scapula retract when you're doing rows and things of that nature. I think that'll give you a good place to start. But if you have that general concept, the next problem I see is just people actually losing that scapular position while they're pressing, especially under maximal loads. My first thing I would say about that is, if you have this issue, make sure that you're doing everything right technically before you say, oh, I have a lagging muscle group, because you might not have a lagging muscle group, you might have a laggy fault of movement, and if that movement is not correct and your technique is wrong, training that musculature might help, but it's a shot in the dark. Where if it's technical, that's something that can be instantly fixed in a matter of weeks once you actually ingrain that movement pattern the way it should be. So when you're down in here, what I'm usually seeing with clients is they come down great, everything looks good, just like I've talked in the other bullet points, but then when they go to press, they push here, and then once they start to really struggle, they just let their scapulas go, and it comes out here, right? I actually just pushed the bar further than I needed to than if I was here. So from a technical standpoint, what we want to focus on is pushing yourself away from the bar. So if my back is against the bench and the bar comes down and I go to press, I want to push myself away from the bar. Granted, you can't do that, but that's what you want to mentally think, because it's going to keep your scapulas in position to optimize that press and keep that range of motion less. Another thing you want to do is make sure when you're coming down and throughout the range, the whole lift, is that you're actually squeezing that bar, you're pulling it apart. You're not actually going to pull it down, but you still want to squeeze it and rotate. You can see the difference in my elbow positioning and how I'm engaging my lats to help take the load on the way down. And then when I go to press, then when I need to flare, if I have to, that's there. But notice that my scapulas are still staying in the right spot. I'm not going here, okay? It's still there. And a good trick to be able to do this that I tell all my clients is, when you're going to squeeze the bar, squeeze it with your ring and your pinky finger. I'm not sure exactly why it works, but if you just think about squeezing just your pinky and your rings, and you squeeze here, you can immediately see that my arm rotates, my lats get tighter, and then I'm good to go, right? So doing that throughout the whole range of motion leaves you in a good place towards lockout. All right, hopefully you can take these 3 bench press tips, use them in your training partners, clients, whatever, and hopefully have a more efficient, stronger bench press. If you got any questions, leave them in the comment section, or you can also check out all my stuff over at elitefts.com.